Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you to all the folks who are joining us live for this presentation, and thank you to all the folks who are watching this later on our portal. We have a great conversation today with folks from Playworks, and the topic, as you all know, is from measuring social emotional learning and impact on broader school climate. So we are very excited. We have two awesome, I'll call them gurus of play with us, which will make sense, I am sure, as they continue with the conversation. But the first presenter we have with us today is Gihani Fernando. She is the Network Strategy Officer for Playworks. She's got over 10 years of experience in both nonprofit and corporate sectors, but her most recent experience is with the Bridgespan Group, providing strategic guidance and support to mission-driven organizations. And we are also joined by Jeanette Clausen, who is the Director of Evaluation at Playworks. She has over 12 years of experience with social service agencies, and her most recent work has been in data management and analysis with the First 5 Contra Costa County, which is a 0 to 5 collaborative in Contra Costa County, California. So I will turn it over to these two awesome gurus of play, and they will take it from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, for that kind introduction. And we're so excited to be with all of you today. This is Gihani talking right now. Wanted to first start by sharing a couple of our objectives for today's conversation, and we'll walk through these just so everyone is on the same page about what we're hoping to do in the next hour. The first piece was just to provide a quick overview of Playworks and give a sense to all of you about how social emotional learning factors and positive school climate factors into our theory of change. We also wanted to share some stories from our own experience measuring SEL skill development and impact on school climate. Third, share with you some tools that might be helpful for your own measurement efforts in these areas. And then finally, create a space for just addressing questions you have and really engaging in a discussion about some of the more common challenges around measuring social emotional learning and school climate, and thinking about how you all are considering this work going forward as well. But before we jump in true Playworks fashion, just thought we'd ask you a question to give you a sense of what we do, and wanted to know what all of your favorite playground games were. And so Michael's going to be putting up a poll, and we'd love to see what games get you all excited. So the question is, what is your favorite recess game? And there are some options here of Foursquare, tag in any form, kickball, wall ball, and feel free to enter in other, and you can add stuff into the chat window if you like. But we'd love to see what you all enjoy doing and what you have enjoyed as a child, either before, or what games you enjoy playing now as an adult. And I guess I should answer it. I'm going to put Foursquare for myself. Awesome. We have someone saying jump rope. I love jump rope. I was never very good at it. We'll give another few seconds for people to enter their responses, and then Michael's going to post up what we heard on the poll. All right, look at that. Looks like Foursquare, tag, and kickball are all getting responses. None for wall ball. I actually myself wasn't sure what wall ball was, so it might be the same for some others, but that's exciting to see. And we will transition into just talking a little bit about Playworks, who we are, and what our impact is as a starting point, just so you have some context on the work that we do over here. And similar to all of you, what really inspires us every day are the kids that we serve. We really believe in the power of play to bring out the best in every child, and we help to empower kids by thinking about safe and healthy play being a way to really promote physical activity and also support social and emotional learning in kids. And the way that we do that is that we partner with schools, districts, and various other youth serving programs to provide a range of services that include on-site coaches, professional training for school staff who support recess, and also just engaging in some consultative work. And to give you a bit more of a sense of what this programming looks like, wanted to share a quick overview of some of our core programs, which you're certainly welcome to learn more about on our website as well. But our very first flagship program was something called PlayWorks Coach, which we still engage in today, where we place trained youth development experts, essentially coaches in schools, who are there to teach games, foster inclusivity, really focus on recess, but also engage in youth leadership through our junior coach program. And they also run things like class game time, as well as after-school sports leagues. And this coach is essentially an integral part of that school day, helping to both create a positive experience at recess and also contribute to other complementary efforts to promote a positive school climate. The coach is often seen as a very supportive adult for those kids that engage in this programming, and we really believe in this notion that there needs to be a caring, consistent adult to support this work. A few years ago, we also came up with a model that we call PlayWorks Team Up, where we have a coach who essentially is a site coordinator for a set of 4 schools. So it's a more cost-effective way for schools to engage in a program that is like the coach model, but that coach actually revolves across those 4 schools over the span of a month. So essentially spends a week at each school over the course of a month and engages with schools over the course of a school year, with some capacity building work being done with staff in the school as well, given that that site coordinator is not at the school every single day. And then finally, we have our PlayWorks Pro service, which is essentially our training service. And we have trainers who go around the country and teach our techniques and strategies to a range of adults that include teachers, administrators, youth development staff, potentially even entire school districts. And this model really was born out of the realization that there's a huge capacity building component to the work that we do, and wanted to be able to share our strategies and practices with other organizations. And we are at a point now where we're looking for more avenues through which we can do things like this, and happy to share more as follow-up to this conversation. But for example, right now we are building out online resources so that people who may not have the chance to interact with us one-on-one can get access to some of the same strategies and approaches that we might share through something like PlayWorks Pro. So that should give you a quick sense of our programs. Wanted to also give you a sense of PlayWorks reach, and you'll see on this map that last year PlayWorks was working in 23 regions across the country. The red dots on this page represent our regions, and we reached 1,300 schools through our regional work, and also when you count our professional training services, impacted more than 750,000 children directly. So while we have our regions, our PlayWorks Pro services actually allow us to engage with adults and people who are working with kids in any area of the country. Wanted to transition now to just talking a little bit about our theory of change, because that's going to set somewhat of the foundation for us to talk about how we think about our outcomes. And you'll see this is a bit of a complicated slide here, but we'll walk through it slowly. So what you'll see on the left side of this page are essentially the components of our program and model in terms of what we do. And there you will see the various services that we just walked through, the notion of the caring, consistent adult that I referred to, as well as the importance of strong school partnerships, because we really believe that the folks that we work with also have to value and invest in play. And when all of these things come together, we believe that what results are the various outcomes that are shown on the right side of this page, leading to the ultimate impact at the very right. And while recess is our first point of entry, and we believe that's an important way of developing students' pro-social skills and results in safe and healthy environments in which they can play, we believe that ultimately results then in a great recess climate, which then contributes to this broader impact of a positive school climate where students have strong social emotional skills, are engaged in schools, and ultimately have seen benefits accrue in the classroom as well as a result of some of these interventions. on the next slide, wanted to share a little bit about our proven outcomes, and we've done a number of studies that have looked at impact on various dimensions, and here you'll see a rough summary of some of those, which include just the engagement of kids in more physical activity, the fact that there's less bullying going on in schools that have playworks, impact on the dimension of students being ready to learn, and also students feeling safer at school. And all of these things relate to that theory of change 5 that we just shared, and that they all build up to what we believe contributes to a positive school climate. What we wanted to do now was just dive a little deeper into the social emotional learning aspect of this, given that we talked about some of the pro-social skills. So we're going to share a few examples about specific outcomes that we look at on the social emotional learning front, just to ground this a little bit and make it tangible in terms of what we look at. So one of the first outcomes we wanted to share and talk about today was social awareness. And so just to get us all on the same page about what we mean by social awareness, we have here a definition which is around taking the perspective of and empathizing with others from diverse backgrounds and really understanding social norms for behavior. In terms of specific skills that are included here, that would include respect, empathy, inclusion, and compassion. And what we think about is, what then are the strategies that we use to build those skills, which for us include a range of games and practices that encourage students to really be able to look at things from the perspective of another person, work with others towards common goals. And so here we're thinking about things like inclusive language, learning how to work in groups, and being able to really interact with their peers as well as with adults. And what we've seen on the outcomes side is teachers reporting increases in students feeling included, less bullying and exclusionary behavior, and within our junior leadership program, which is called Junior Coach, self-reports of increases in empathy and being able to relate to others. Another example of this is an SEL skill called self-management, where we're referring to students' ability to really regulate their emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations and work towards setting and achieving goals. And again, just to be specific about what types of skills we're referencing here, things like managing stress, self-control, goal setting, and aspirations, similar to the definition above. And in our case, again, using games and practices that specifically focus on developing these skills in kids. So thinking about how they adhere to different game rules, whether they can actually manage frustration or disappointment, and how they think about breaking down larger goals into smaller ones. And on this front, we've seen outcomes that include teachers saying students feel more emotionally safe. They're seeing overall improvements in developing their goals and aspirations, and our youth leaders in particular reporting some of these higher self-management competencies. And Jeanette, my colleague, is going to share a little bit more about some of the different approaches we use, but you'll see even in these outcomes that there are sometimes a range of different measures and tools that we use to assess the way these skills manifest. And then just a final example around relationship skills, and I think one of the skills we're talking about here include cooperation, communication, conflict resolution, and seeking help. And the strategies are really around building some of those different pro-social skills again, and what we're finding is increased peer-to-peer interactions that are positive, seeing less conflicts, and teachers reporting higher levels of cooperation. So again, just to ground this, what we wanted to do was share how we've looked at some specific SEL skills and illustrate for you the strategies that we use, the kinds of outcome findings we've looked at before we actually launch into some of the evaluation tools that we've used specifically. So let me just pause there and see if there are any questions that people have before we dive into our next section, which is going to go deeper into actually how we measure these skills and some of the tools we've used to gauge SEL skills and impact on broader school climate. Any questions about playwork specifically or the kinds of skills that we look at? And I'll just give a second in case people want to chat in anything. There's one question on who pays for the service, whether it's the schools. And We do have schools pay for the service. In the case of low-income schools, it's partly subsidized. And in the case of pro trainings, that can be a range of organizations that pay for that. So you might have districts paying for schools to partake in that kind of professional development, or we've had youth development organizations pay for it directly. So the pro training model payment differs, and we have different types of training, so people can either pay for a shorter 3-hour one, or there are much more intensive ones that folks can partake in. Great. If there are no other questions, I'm actually going to hand it over to my colleague, Jeanette, who leads our evaluation work.
So Gihani, there is actually one question in the Q&A box, and there's another one that has popped in the chat box, but I'll read the one from the Q&A box first.
Okay.
Have you developed original games, or do you use traditional games like Tag and Foursquare, or is it a mix?
This is Jeanette. I can jump in. It's a mix. We do use some traditional games, some traditional tag games, but we have some sort of twist or way that we've rethought, making sure that people are feeling included. We do something called recycle, where instead of being out, you might get your tags, you're out, you might go do 10 jumping jacks or give 5 people a high five, and then you jump back into the game. So we've kind of looked at games, traditional games, and made sure that they are inclusive and that they are focusing a little bit more on some of the skills that we're trying to teach. And then we have, variations, many different variations of games, tons of tag games out there where we have invented them ourselves, our students invent them, and we put them together in what we call our playbook.
Awesome, thank you. And then Chris has also asked, do you use a specific measurement to assess social emotional learning? When a teacher reports less of something, is this based on a pre or a post assessment, or is this based on teachers' sense of things reducing?
Yeah, we're going to go into the next part is going to be about the specific measures we've used. The data that was just shared is from a combination of some of the tools that I'm going to share with you, and then some that were done more through the randomized controlled trial, which use a mix of ones we've introduced and done internally, as well as some that were externally implemented by the researchers.
Great, thank you.
All right, so I think before we jump into the next section, we just wanted to get a sense of the experience that people have had who are on the webinar with measuring SEL. So I think we are going to put up a slide that is, what is your experience with measuring social emotional learning and broader impact on school climate? So go ahead and take a second to all right, and when we're ready, we'll get those results up.
Got about 76 folks having responded so far, and it's just 30 seconds, and we'll give folks just another 10 more seconds to answer, and then we'll go ahead and share those results.
Okay, great. All right, so it looks like we have a mix of people who are currently doing things and those who aspire but lack a plan for how to do so. So that's great. Hopefully we will give you some ideas on ways that you can think about measuring in your own program. So to start with, we thought we'd give you a little context for our efforts around measuring SEL and school climate. As you just saw, our theory of change has SEL skills embedded in it. And that is one of our goals. So we do have, we have been looking at this since we created the theory of change. When we, over the last 20 years, we have had varied measures. But I'm going to be talking about ones over the last about 5 to 6 years, as we have really started thinking much more intentionally about SEL. All of our approaches have had many benefits and also many challenges, as you can imagine. And I'll kind of dive into what some of those challenges and what those benefits are. I'll share with you right now, we haven't found the magic bullet yet. So if you're hoping for the magical tool, we're still experimenting and learning along the way. So we are using a couple of tools that we have created internally, and then we're also experimenting with a variety of tools that are externally that we have found through our partners or that are commonly used in the SEL landscape. And I'm going to dive into each of them individually, so we'll go ahead and jump in. Our annual survey is, we do this for school staff in all of our Playworks schools, anywhere that we have Coach, Team Up, or Pro services. We do an online qualitative and quantitative survey, somewhat gauged to measure satisfaction with the program, but there are very specific questions in there around behaviors that we want to see, positive behaviors we want to see increases in, and negative behaviors that we want to see decreases in. And we're looking at this both in terms of the playground as well as the classroom. And we asked them some questions thinking about before Playworks was there or before you had a coach on your campus. Some of the benefits and challenges are the benefits. It allows us really the teacher's perception and their understanding of change that's happening in their school. The qualitative is amazing. We are always surprised at how much teachers are willing to write about things that they're seeing, and it's been a really great way for us to also surface some of the ways that they think about how play relates to social emotional skills in ways that we either weren't really thinking about or in language that is different than the way that we're talking about it. So having the qualitative component has been critical for us to understand. Some of the challenges is that it is a Playworks administered survey, created and administered survey, so it's very subjective as well. We're asking teachers to just give their opinions. So it kind of depends on who's taking the survey. Oftentimes we get those who are really happy with the survey or with the service, or those who are really unhappy with the service, so it has some bias built in. Again, it's a challenge is the ability to measure the SEL skill development is a little bit limited. It's really just a one-time sort of gauge of what's happening in the school. The second tool that we're spending a lot of time over the last couple of years building is something we call the Great Recess Framework, where we wanted to create an observational tool that we could assess when a school has a really high quality recess. And we think of that from three different lenses: the safety of the environment, the engagement of the students and the adults, and the empowerment of the school to really own and take on safe and healthy play on their own. This Great Recess Framework, like I said, has some environmental questions. It's a 26 indicators that include both generally kind of spacing as well as student and adult behavior. There's also some very specific SEL indicators built in: conflict awareness, conflict resolution, social awareness. There's some inclusion questions and empathy questions as well. Some of the benefits and challenges of this, the benefit is it is observational data, which really gives us an in-depth view of what's going on. We can see the students, as opposed to a survey, we can see the students and the adults really engaged and demonstrating some of those SEL skills. It also is providing a framework for understanding where play and SEL interact. And we are just in the beginning stages of utilizing the GRF. We've spent the last 2 years building it and testing it and piloting it. And then this last school year, we have been working with a researcher to try to validate and make it reliable across multiple raters. One of the challenges we run into is the length of the observation. It does take a lot of time. An observational tool is in and of itself very resource heavy. A person actually has to physically go out and look at a recess and then complete the 26 indicators. Like I said, we're still learning and developing, but it's really proving to be a really promising tool for us in terms of understanding what are the factors that go into creating a high quality recess and how does SEL interact with that. We did create, because the Great Recess Framework is such a intensive tool, we created something called the Playworks Recess Checkup, which is also an online survey intended to really quickly have a principal or a teacher or other adults on the school to gauge the level of safety, engagement, and empowerment that exists. And then again, within those different domains, our SEL isn't called out specifically, but it's kind of embedded in the questions that are being asked. Some of the advantages or some of the benefits and challenges to this one is we're able to gather information from a large, broad group of schools. So we're getting a better understanding of the state of safe and healthy play. It's short and sweet. It takes about 5 minutes to complete. So it's really nice. It's an online survey tool. People can go in and get a really quick gauge of their recess. The challenge is that it is so short, so it's not really getting a really in-depth view. And we're only really looking and asking questions about recess. We're not really asking questions about the broader school day. This is also very new, but it's something that we are trying to promote and use more and more so that we can get a better sense of what is happening broadly around safe and healthy play at recess. So now I'm going to transition into some of the learnings and tools that we have applied that are external tools that we have gone out and done some looking to see what tools might work for us. This one is called it's out of the Pear Institute out of Harvard. It's called the Holistic Student Assessment. It's a strengths-based approach, which is nice. It measures resilience, relationships, learning, and school engagement. And it's really, it can be used as both, you can do it throughout your school programming multiple times, and then the information that you get, you can help tailor your services and your program to better understand what individual students need if that's part of your program. The benefit is that this assessment has demonstrated outcomes, and it's really easy to administer. They have a retrospective available called the HSAR, which is great if you're just looking to see, if you're not using it for program course correction or to do it along the way. It's a one point in time. It's asking students retrospectively to think about before they joined a program, how did they feel, and a series of questions. It does use very specific terms that don't necessarily align with some of the more commonly used terms, that it doesn't align with the CASEL, which CASEL is one of the larger, well-known frameworks for what people think, and the indicators and the language for which they use. So it has its very specific language that many people enjoy, and we have found to be positive. We've also used the Devereux Student Strengths Assessment, which is also called the DESA. It is also a strengths-based measure of social competence, and it can be used in children kindergarten through 8th grade. This is it's not a student self-report. This is an adult, either teacher or caregiver or after-school provider. It's a report about individual students. So it's nice in that it can be used with a pretty broad range from kindergarten through 8th grade, and that it can be used from different perspectives, from the parent's perspective, from the teacher in the classroom perspective, or in the out-of-school time perspective as well. Some of the strengths, some of the benefits and challenges it is really comprehensive. The great thing is, I think the full one, I can't remember exactly, I want to say it's at least 60 items. So it's a really lengthy, in-depth assessment tool. But the great thing, it's 72 items. The great thing about it is they created this mini version, which is only 8 items, which is great. So you can do it really quickly. It's valid and reliable, the mini version is, which is fabulous. It makes implementation so much easier. We had a lot of challenges at implementing the paper version. We were using the full version, and it was 72 items. It was just way too time consuming, and we couldn't figure out how to scale that with an organization like Playworks, where we're just so expansive. The mini might be a good option for us, and one that we're exploring as well. And then we also have been working with, in the state of California, there's a couple of districts that have gotten together called the core districts, where they were looking at accountability on things other than just academics, and they were looking at SEL skills as something that they wanted to hold their schools accountable to. And they developed a self-report, student self-report, as well as a teacher report about individual students, measuring 3 different competencies: self-management, self-advocacy, and social awareness. Transforming Ed is the organization that we're working with. It's helping also the core districts to use these and helping us think about how we might be able to utilize these measures and tools that they have done the work on and created them to be valid and reliable. Some of the benefits is that there is still ongoing research around these particular tools, and so it's really fresh and new, and there's a lot of exciting research going on. So there's a lot of conversation about how these measures work or possibly don't work. It is student and teacher voice, which is nice to have both on the same measures. The challenges for us is it really is only 4th grade and higher. So we're losing, because we're in the K to 6 space, we're losing out on a lot of our students. So I think the overall learnings that we have had over the last at least 4 years of trying to implement is there are a range of tools that exist, but there are trade-offs for both. For anything, there's always going to be trade-offs. Some that we feel like are a better tool really just ended up being too hard for us to administer. And those that are easy for us to administer, we're questioning, if they're the right tool for us. We are a national organization, and we do find that the language is different in every region. And so how do we anchor different SEL terms, and how do we want to align them? And some tools are well known in different spaces. And so some of our regions really want to use a specific tool, but that tool doesn't necessarily speak to people in other regions. So we're really wrestling with, how do we as a national organization collect something that's sort of standard that we can learn about from all of our different regions when we need to be so specialized. And then any of you who have been in the SEL world or are following some of the research and the conversation, it's still very much in a new stage. There's a lot of experimenting going on. There's a lot of conversation about what is the right measure, what are the measures telling us, when can you use them for accountability, when can you use them for program evaluation, and there is this idea of rapidly scaling them is becoming difficult, especially because there's just not a lot of common understanding of what the measures are measuring, and if they're measuring the right thing. Great, so that is what I have. I'm wondering if you have any specific questions. You can type them into the chat or the Q&A, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
We'll give folks around a minute. Type any questions that you may have in either into the chat box, or there is a feature Q&A that you should all see where you can post your questions as well. But both Jeanette and Gihani will be available over email as well. And so when this recording and their slides are posted to the portal, I will make sure to post the email addresses as well, which are also in this slide deck. So if there are things lingering and you have follow-up questions after this presentation or later on, or you'd like to direct somebody from your district, either one of them, you would be able to do that. But we did just have a question pop in. How long did the Devereaux mini version take?
How long does the mini version take? Is that the question?
That is the question.
So it's really fast. It's only 8 questions. I want to say it takes less than 5 minutes. We didn't actually use the mini version. We used the full DESA, and that took a long time. And then the mini version was introduced to us afterwards as a good option, because our challenge was the full version took way too long.
Awesome.
I'll say the mini version I think is really good for looking kind of broadly at either like your whole classroom and how well they're doing, or over time if there's growth. If you're looking for using it as more like either course correction or to tailor your activities to a student's particular skills, the full version is going to give you a much more in-depth view and understanding of what's happening and where that particular child has strengths.
Great, thank you. We did get another question in the Q&A box. Because of the different needs and requests of different schools, do you use a different set of tools at each school, or is there a standardized practice?
It's a good question. Some of the ones that are Playworks created that I shared with you, the annual survey and the GRF, those are at every school for every service. The ones that we're experimenting with where they're external tools, we have not found one to use and utilize in all of our schools in every region. Regions have been opting into different, sort of helping us pilot and think about which ones are working and which ones are getting us the information that we need. So we've been doing it very much on a regional driven. We have conversations with each of the regions to find out what are the needs in their region, and then we have been allowing them to opt into which one sort of meets the needs that they have.
Great, thank you. And then we had another one that says, it seems like everyone is in the same boat with starting to explore SEL measurement. Are there any national movements to develop more consistent SEL language and standard measurement tools? Is CASEL probably the most widely used? And have you used any of their surveys?
Yes, everybody is sort of exploring this. I think it's really messy, and I would say there isn't a lot of clarity on moving towards some sort of national standards. There are different spaces and conversations that are happening. I think the researchers, and this is completely my opinion, the researchers need to move slow because the research takes a long time, and the practitioners are like, we need to move fast because we need to know this now. And so trying to get those people in the same room, there is some movement, but reconciling those are difficult. And so I think there is some conversation. I know that the ESSA has a non-cognitive measure in it. So states and districts are really thinking right now, what is that going to look like? And SEL is one option. They're also using a lot of proxy measures like chronic absenteeism and disciplinary referrals. But a lot of states are toying with and thinking about how they can begin to measure SEL. The question about CASEL, CASEL is probably the most widely understood and the best researched framework out there, and language. The DESA is directly crosswalked to the CASEL framework, so that we have used that. And we do feel like that resonates with probably the most schools out there, although there are those caveats here and there where for whatever reason CASEL wasn't adopted and some other language or some other framework has been adopted. So it isn't as it's not necessarily a national tool by any means, but I think it is one of the more widely used and understood frameworks.
And I would just add to what Jeanette said, as someone who leads our partnerships work and sitting in on conversations where numerous players in the field come around this work, one of the starting conversations always is, well, can we all just use the same language so that we could all be aligned? And I think the reality, it's kind of the aspiration of it is different from the reality, I think, for a lot of folks. I think a lot of it is also driven by how funders are thinking about it. And I think different funders are tied to different types of measures, and that kind of creates its own set of incentives. That being said, I think many funders would love for there to be more standardization across all of this. And I think one of the realities of it too is that children need a whole range of skills to succeed in school and in life. And I think that part of it is trying to figure out, not let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and kind of move forward even if there may not be total alignment on all of this yet. and agree on CASEL being a great resource. There also is Aspen Institute's National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Learning that's kind of trying to figure out how to think about these measures. And there are a number of other kind of national level coalitions and efforts that are looking at more and more of these skills. And I think the positive thing is that there are way more folks out there that are focused on this as an additional piece that's important for our children to succeed. And I think that is heartening, even though we are in the early stages of getting on the same page about exactly how we measure it.
Yeah, I think the other thing that Playworks has tried to do is to map and crosswalk sort of what are some of the, the CASEL framework and the language that they use. What are the actual skills that are embedded in there, and where is that our common language? Not necessarily the larger framework we're using. So conflict resolution to us is very important, and that fits into a lot of different SEL frameworks out there, or language, or larger constructs out there. So when you're thinking about your organization, it's what are kind of the concrete skills that you're trying to learn, and where does that fit? So empathy, it might not be called empathy on the tool that we're using, but where does that fit into understanding social awareness? And that's some of the work that we have been doing for the last year, and will continue to do.
Thank you both so much. That was enormously helpful and very good context, I think, for participants to have, given your expertise with this work. Before folks do sign off, we do have one post-polling question that is a Strive Together polling question just about the webinar, and we will be emailing out just a very brief survey as well. So if you could take just a moment to answer questions as well, that would be very helpful, and there will be more questions geared towards this specific webinar in the survey that we will send afterwards. That will include the opportunity to give us your name and email address, and for us to share that with the folks at Playworks, so that if you want to keep this conversation going, or for folks at your district who may not have been on the call but you think might be valuable for them to connect with, there will be space for that as well. Recording and the slides will be made available on the portal along with the email addresses, but I'd just like to take a moment right now and thank Jeanette and Gihani so much. We feel very fortunate to have both of you and Playworks join us today for this webinar, and we're very appreciative of your guidance and expertise on this topic that it seems like a lot of our partnerships are talking quite a bit about.
Well, it was our pleasure to participate in today's conversation, and we really respect all the work that you all are doing in your communities as well. So thank you for having us. And you will find at the end of this presentation, when it's posted online, that there's a page that includes links to all of the tools and resources that we talked about today. So we encourage you to explore that if you were interested in any of them. And as Michael said, we're very open to reconnecting with any of you who are interested in just understanding more about our experience, or even testing out any of the tools that are included there. And in particular, the recess checkup is something we're very much in the vein of just testing and experimenting with right now. So if any of you are curious to try it out in your schools, would welcome just learning what your experience was with that, and look forward to hopefully engaging with you all and connecting in different ways on this topic going forward as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Great. Thank you all, and everybody have a great rest of your day.